Imagine walking into your own home and realizing you've been replaced, not just by anyone, but by your best friend. My wife, my kids, even my own mother, they all chose him. But instead of losing my mind, I smiled and took everything back. Not with fists, with silence, strategy, and one brutal move at a time. You won't believe how far I went, and how fast their world collapsed without me. Let me start from the beginning. I walked through the front door, bone-tired after a long, draining day, just hoping for a quiet night to unwind. But instead of the comfort I expected, I was met with a strange kind of silence, the kind that didn't feel right, like it didn't belong in my house. Sitting there on the couch were my mother, my wife Laura, my 2 sons, and my best friend Brian. All of them were dead quiet, their expressions unreadable, their eyes refusing to meet mine. Something felt off the second I stepped in. This wasn't your everyday awkward tension when I came home late. It was different, heavier. It wasn't the usual burnt toast smell from Laura's cooking experiments gone wrong. And it wasn't the way my boys sat stiff like statues, like they were bracing for bad news. No, this was deeper. It was intentional, calculated. I dropped my briefcase gently by the door, roll my shoulders, try to shake off the weight of the day and this new weirdness. I asked, keeping my voice level, "What's going on?" No one answered right away. That pause, that hesitation, it sent a chill crawling up my spine. Then Logan, my oldest, cleared his throat, his voice low and steady. "Dad, you should sit down. You need to face the truth," he said next. "You're not the head of this family anymore. Uncle Brian, he's more like a father to us now." It hit me like a sucker punch to the chest. I blinked, thinking maybe I'd heard him wrong. "Come again." I sounded calm, way too calm for the wildfire starting to rage in my gut. Logan still wouldn't meet my eye. He tapped his fingers on his knee, a nervous habit he'd had since he was little. But my focus shifted. I wasn't looking at Logan anymore. I was looking at Laura. She sat perfectly still, hands folded in her lap, face unreadable. No shock, no guilt, just blank, like she'd known all along, like they all had. My mother let out a breath and shifted slightly, like she'd been holding it in for this exact moment. Her face didn't show surprise, not even anger, just quiet agreement. She was part of it. She was in on it. And Brian, my so-called best friend, he didn't so much as blink. Sat there like he was leading a board meeting, completely at ease. He looked like he belonged there, too comfortable, like this had been his seat for a while now. The truth smacked me in the chest. This wasn't something that just happened. This had been in the works, planned behind my back. I stared at my sons, silently pleading with them to hesitate, to waver, to show even a sliver of guilt. But Logan was firm, locked in, and Ethan, my younger one, quieter than his brother, didn't flinch, didn't look away, didn't say a word to defend me. I inhaled slowly, pushing down the lava boiling beneath my skin. I'd built a career on staying in control, in negotiating with cold-blooded men in courtrooms, tearing apart lies with precision. But this wasn't a case to win. This was war, and I just walked into the trap. "Brian is more like a father to you," I repeated, my voice steady and flat like a razor's edge. Logan nodded, his jaw clenched. Yeah, I didn't even glance at Brian. Couldn't. Not yet. Instead, I looked at Laura again. "Laura," I said, my tone sharper now, like a blade just beginning to draw blood. "Got anything you want to add?" For the first time, I saw a crack in her cool facade. She took a breath and nervously smoothed out her dress, like maybe fixing the wrinkles could fix what she'd done. She wasn't ready for this moment. That was my first win. "I think we should," she began, but I held up my hand. "No, don't give me some polished, pre-rehearsed speech. No dodging. Just tell me, when exactly did I stop being your husband? When did I stop being their father? Was it slow and quiet, or did you just decide one night, lying in our bed?" Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. That silence? That was victory number 2. She expected me to lose it, to scream, to break down. But instead, I was calculating. Cold. Steel. And finally, I turned to face him. Brian. The man I trusted with my life. The guy who stood beside me when my sons were born. Who gave a toast to my wedding. The man who celebrated my wins and mourned my losses. Who I called brother. Now here he was in my living room, on my couch, just waiting for me to crack so he could claim the crown. He was waiting for my meltdown. Instead, I smiled. Not a happy smile, a slow, tight grin. The kind that used to rattle the nerves of cocky lawyers across the courtroom. And for a second, just 1 second, Brian's confidence wavered. That was win number 3. I straightened up, casually adjusting my shirt cuffs like this was just another Tuesday night inconvenience. The air in the room was heavy, choking, but I wouldn't let them see the damage. I wouldn't give them that satisfaction. So I turned toward the door. "You got something to say?" Brian finally spoke up, smooth as ever. That smug voice like he had it all under control. I paused mid-step, tilted my head, dragging out the silence, letting the tension stretch so tight it could snap. Then I chuckled. Low, dark, like I knew something they didn't. That was my 4th win. I didn't say another word, just walked out, because this wasn't the night they broke me. This was the night I started preparing. And by the time they figured out what was coming, it'd be too damn late. I closed the door behind me, stepped into the hallway, and just stood there, listening. Nobody said a word at first. Then I heard it, movement, a few relieved breaths. They thought I was gone, that I'd given up. That was the proof I needed. They expected an outburst, a dramatic confrontation, maybe some desperate begging. But they didn't know me. I walked down the hall, past the family photos lining the walls, all those fake smiles, staged memories, lies in picture frames, Laura, my mom, the boys, and Brian. What shocked me most wasn't the betrayal. It was how ordinary they made it feel, like it was natural, like they'd already moved on, without me. I went into my study, closed the door quietly behind me, sat in my chair, leaned back, and laced my fingers together. Then I let out a slow breath. The fury inside me was still there, smoldering. It wanted to explode, to destroy. I want to go back in there and tear the whole place apart. Let Brian know exactly how badly he messed up. But rage burns fast. Pain fades. Bruises heal. Revenge, now that sticks. And for that, I need patience. The pieces were already lining up. I hadn't missed the signs because I was naive. I missed them because I chose to believe, to trust. My mother always had too much influence. Way too much. She didn't tell me to marry Laura outright, but she nudged things, directed the story, made it feel like Laura was the right choice. A good wife, a respectable woman, someone to build a life with. And for a while, she was all that, until the day she wasn't. It all changed the moment she decided that being my wife just wasn't enough anymore. I leaned forward at my desk, fingers drumming lightly against the wood, my mind repeating the same question. Brian? Of all people, why him? Cheating had crossed my mind before. Hard not to when you're a lawyer. You see behind the curtain too many times. I've watched countless marriages crack and crumble, seen secrets slip out in divorce filings like ghosts escaping closets. There's always betrayal, always someone sneaking around. And I used to think, foolishly, that if it ever happened to me, I'd spot it right away. I'd feel it. But I hadn't. Not even a whisper of it. Because it wasn't just one betrayal. It was a slow invasion. A creeping replacement. A silent mutiny. Plotted, careful, precise. They slipped up, though. That's the thing. They misread me completely. Took my quiet for surrender. Thought maybe I was too old, too rooted in comfort to fight back. What they didn't realize was that I'd already left. Not physically, not yet. But inside, I was long gone. My heart had checked out. My head had followed. And when a man lets go like that, when he stops giving a damn, he becomes a real threat. That was their first mistake. Their second, they assumed I had nothing left to lose. That they drained me dry, left me hollow. But they forgot something important. I'm a lawyer, and in my world, power doesn't come from feelings. It comes from leverage. And I had plenty of that, more than they could ever guess. That's when the plans started taking shape. I pulled out my phone, scrolled through the names, and hit dial. First stop, Todd, my financial advisor. Todd, I said calm and clear. I want every single joint account frozen. Right now. He paused. Sir, are you sure? That means your wife. I know exactly what it means. I cut in. No hesitation. No room for doubt. Understood. Click. First domino down. Then I called Greg, my attorney. Greg, I said even smoother now. I need the divorce paperwork drafted ASAP. Non-negotiable. I want it in motion today. He took a beat. I could hear the gears turning. "I'll have it ready by morning," he finally said. Second domino. And then I called an old favor. Someone who owed me. Someone with a particular skill set. Someone who specializes in destruction. With those 3 calls, the machine started moving. Quiet, deadly precise. I leaned back in my chair and I stared at the ceiling. The weight of it all started pressing in, but it didn't crush me. They thought I'd slink off, licking my wounds. What they didn't realize is that I wasn't retreating. I was reloading. By the time it all hit them, the damage would already be done. The next morning came with no thunder. No fireworks. Just silence. It started when Laura tried to do something routine, an online transfer. Probably to cover some household bill, or maybe splurge on some overpriced nonsense from one of her favorite boutiques. But instead of the usual confirmation, the screen flashed red. Transaction declined. She frowned. Hit refresh. Same result. She switched devices, tried her phone, toggled through accounts. Still nothing. Now Laura isn't dumb. She picked up on it fast. Something was very wrong. So she threw on her coat, slid into the Mercedes I bought her last year for her birthday, and headed straight to the bank. That's where reality finally slapped her across the face. "Mrs. Mercer," the bank manager greeted, looking uncomfortable in his fancy chair. "Yes." Laura snapped, already annoyed. "What's the problem?" "My account's locked. There's some kind of hold on it." The man shifted in his seat. "I'm afraid there's been a freeze placed on all joint accounts." "Excuse me," she narrowed her eyes. He cleared his throat. "Your husband initiated the freeze. His attorney submitted the required documentation. Legally, we can't grant you access unless he authorizes it." She went still. Her breath caught in her throat. "This is ridiculous," she said, voice sharp. "I've had access to those accounts for years." "Yes, ma'am," the manager said with polite finality. "And now you don't." That's when it sank in. I had cut her off. Completely. She never thought I'd have the spine to do it. Not after everything we'd been through. Not after building a life together. She thought I'd break down and beg. But instead, I starved them. First the accounts. Then the credit cards. By the time Laura walked out of that bank, I imagine her hands were already shaking as she called Brian. Probably something like, "Brian, he froze everything. What are we going to do?" But Brian couldn't save her. He was drowning too. While she panicked at the bank, I was already moving on to phase 2, wiping out her lines of credit. She stopped for coffee on the way home, tried her platinum card. Declined. Tried another one. Declined. Even pulled out that emergency card she always kept hidden in her purse. Declined again. And that's when real fear started setting in. Meanwhile, Brian was stepping into a storm of his own. See, Brian's business wasn't thriving because he was brilliant or talented. It thrived because of me. Because I made the calls. I made the introductions. I brought the clients and held the doors open. And now, I was locking every one of those doors. First, the construction firm that had fed him work for years gone. Contracts canceled with no warning. Then the supplier that kept his inventory flowing sent an email. "Due to unforeseen circumstances, we are terminating our partnership effective immediately." Brian didn't know it yet, but his business was living on borrowed time. By lunchtime, 2 more investors bailed. By dinner, his cash flow was gasping for air. By the time he opened his own banking app and saw the numbers bleeding red, it hit him. I hadn't just kicked him out of my life. I'd cut the connection for good. While they were both scrambling, Laura with her finances, Brian with his collapsing company, my sons were about to get their share of the fallout. Logan and Ethan had never really understood the life they lived. Not truly. They thought money just flowed in by magic. That their Ivy League tuition, their cars, their comfort, all of it just existed. But it was me. I funded it all. Every last bit. And yet, they'd chosen to turn on me. They'd called another man dad before I even walked out that door. So I gave them what they wanted. I stepped out of the picture. Let them see what life felt like without me in it. First to feel it was Logan. You got a notice midweek. Your tuition bill is past due. If not paid within 7 days, your enrollment will be suspended. Ethan, meanwhile, noticed something else. The money I deposited for him every month? Gone. Just gone. No heads up. No explanation. Gone. Just like that. Their money, their safety net, vanished. They both called the bank, scrambling for answers. And just like what happened to their mother, they got the same icy reply. Your father has revoked your access. You're no longer authorized to use these funds. And just like that, panic set in. By the time evening rolled around, the calls started. Laura called. The boys called. Even Brian reached out. And my mother, the very woman who raised me, the same one who'd quietly pulled strings behind this whole betrayal, she called too. I didn't answer a single one. Not yet. They weren't ready. Not until they truly felt what I'd felt. Not until they understood what it meant to lose me. Not just the man they thought they could replace, but the man who had made all of it possible. By the time night fell, I imagined they ended up back in that same living room. The same place where they made their little decision. Their coup. But the atmosphere wasn't the same. This time, the power wasn't in their hands. This time, they weren't smug. They were sinking fast. And me? I was standing on solid ground, watching them go under. Brian sat in his office, sipping his usual overpriced coffee, the kind he liked to show off with, completely unaware that the floor beneath him was cracking wide open. For years, Brian had built his business not on talent, not on brains, not on hustle, but on connections. My connections. From day one, when he launched that so-called company of his, he leaned on my name, my clients, my influence, my reputation, and I gave it to him back when I still thought he was my friend, my brother in everything but blood. But now I was tearing it all down. First hit, the disappearing investors. The first red flag showed up in an email. Subject line, contract termination. Brian clicked it with a frown, his eyes skimming the message while his forehead creased deeper by the second. Due to unforeseen financial issues, we regret to inform you that our contract with your firm is terminated, effective immediately. His jaw clenched tight. The email was from one of his biggest investors, the one that basically kept his company breathing. He put the phone down, ran his fingers through his hair, trying to shake off the cold creeping into his spine. Nah, this had to be a misunderstanding. Some paperwork mix-up. Something fixable. He picked up the phone, dialed, and forced a smile as his contact picked up. Hey, Derek. Just saw the email. Is everything all right? What's going on? There was a pause. A long one. Then Derek sighed. Brian, I am sorta, Mum. I really am. But we can't be associated with you anymore. Brian's grip on the phone tightened. What? Why? Nothing's changed since last week. Another pause. Then came a gut punch. Jake. Everything in Brian froze. What about him? He asked, barely getting the words out. Derek's voice dropped. Look, I don't know what happened between you two, but he's making it known that partnering with you is not a smart move. Brian shot up from his chair so fast he knocked over his coffee. It spilled across his desk, but he didn't care. This is insane, he snapped. Jake wouldn't do that. He's not. Derek cut him off. He's a powerful man, Brian. Respected. And if I'm being honest, if I had to choose between keeping business with him or with you, another pause, I'd pick him. Every time. Click. The line went dead. And just like that, the dominoes started falling. Brian stood frozen, still holding the phone to his ear long after the call ended. No, this couldn't be happening. Jake wasn't like this. Sure, he was sharp, calculated, ruthless in court. But this? Was he really the kind of man to burn a life to the ground? His phone rang again. Another investor. Same story. Then another. And another. By noon, 4 of his biggest clients had backed out. By 3, his suppliers were ignoring him. By 5, his business was choking. And then came the kill shot. Licenses. Revoked. Brian was still spiraling when his assistant walked into his office, her face pale and tight. Sir, she said softly, we just received a notice from the licensing board. He looked up, nausea twisting in his gut. What? She walked over and placed a letter on his desk. He picked it up with shaking hands and read the first line. Effective immediately. The following licenses have been revoked due to legal concerns surrounding ethical violations and conflict of interest. The rest blurred into nonsense. His company wasn't just in trouble. It was dead. Officially. Legally. And there was no coming back. Brian sank into his chair, his breathing shallow, his world collapsing. This wasn't bad luck. This wasn't karma. This was a clean hit. Precision work. And there was only one person in the world who could pull something like this off. Me. Jake. The friend he betrayed. The man he stabbed in the back. And now, Brian was learning something I never had to say out loud. I don't just settle scores. I end the game. By the time Brian gathered himself, he had 58 missed calls. Half from Laura. The rest? Investors. Employees. Clients. All freaking out. All wanting answers. And me? I hadn't answered a single one. Not a word. Not a sound. Brian gritted his teeth and tried one more time. Straight to voicemail. Again. The same one he'd heard all day. You've reached Jake Mercer. I am unavailable. Leave a message. Beep. He gripped the phone harder. Jake, he started, voice shaking. I don't know what you're doing, but you have to stop. Silence. He swallowed hard. Look, I get it. We need to talk. Just call me back, all right? This has gone far enough. Click. End of message. Ignored. Brian sat there, staring at the screen, heart pounding in his chest. Because this wasn't just revenge. It was making sure they never had a place in the story again. And there wasn't a damn thing he could do to stop it. That evening, the house was silent. Too silent. Laura sat in the living room, clutching her phone so tightly her knuckles had gone white. The lamp beside her flickered, casting a dim, unsteady light over her worried face. She'd called Jake, over and over. Nothing. No reply. Not a single word. Her hands trembled as she tried calling Brian next. But before it even rang, she already knew. Voicemail. The number you're trying to reach is unavailable. Laura let out a shaky breath and looked around the room. Logan sat frozen on the couch, eyes locked on his laptop screen. But he wasn't typing. The screen showed a notification. From his university. Ethan was pacing like a caged animal, never one to sit still when the walls started closing in. And right now, everything was caving in around them. They knew it. Laura knew it. But none of them said it out loud. Because speaking the truth would make it real. And that truth, Jake Mercer had done what none of them believed possible. I had taken everything out from under them, torn apart the foundation they thought would always hold them up. The tuition funds? Gone without a trace. Logan hadn't said a word in over an hour. Not since he opened his student portal to check on his next tuition installment and saw the bold red notice flashing across the screen. Urge tuition payment overdue. Immediate payment required to stay enrolled. His stomach flipped. That had to be a glitch. His tuition was always covered, paid ahead of time. He never even worried about it. But when he pulled up his financial records, his heart began pounding. The money was missing. All of it. His father, had pulled every last dollar. Logan had always just assumed his education was a given. Something permanent. Something untouchable. Just like he thought I was. Now, he wasn't sure about either one. He remembered the words he'd said the night before, with conviction. Uncle Brian is more like a father to us now. And now that sentence twisted in his gut like a blade. He'd made the wrong choice. And he knew it. Across the room, Ethan's world was crumbling in its own way. He was the first to break the silence. Mom, he snapped, running his hand through his hair. I just tried to get gas. Car got declined. Again. Laura barely flinched. She was still locked on her phone, lost somewhere far away in her thoughts. Ethan paced the floor in frustration. I called the bank. You want to guess what they said? My account's empty. Drained. He spun around, facing both his mother and brother. Is anyone going to say it out loud? Dad's cutting us off. Logan clenched his jaw, silent. Laura finally exhaled, slow and tired. Yes, she admitted. He is. Ethan let out a bitter laugh, throwing his hands in the air. Great. Just great. I mean, what did you expect? You let Uncle Brian roll over him like some kind of parasite. Now look where we are. Laura whipped her head toward him, her voice sharp. I didn't let Brian do anything. She caught herself mid-sentence, then sighed. Your father is retaliating. Ethan scoffed again. Retaliating? Mom, open your eyes. He's not just hitting back. He's burning it all down. And in that moment, for the first time all day, Laura believed him. The phone call that changed everything. When the landline rang, the whole room froze. Laura grabbed it so fast she nearly fumbled it. Jake? She breathed into the receiver. But the voice on the other end wasn't mine. It was her mother's, and her tone was like ice. Laura, Helen said flatly. Are you sitting down? Laura frowned, tightening her grip. What's wrong? Helen took a breath, steadying herself. Then she dropped the hammer. Your father's retirement fund. It's gone. Laura's lips went dry. What? She whispered, her throat closing up. I checked this morning, Helen continued. The accounts. The ones Jake's been managing for us. They're empty, Laura. Every penny. We're broke. She couldn't breathe. That's not possible. Jake wouldn't. Oh, wouldn't he? Her mother's voice cut in, sharper now. Because I think he would. And I think he just did. Laura's mind went blank. Her parents, the people who trusted Jake with everything, were wiped out. His investments, his planning, his foresight, all of it gone. Because of her. She squeezed her eyes shut, overwhelmed. Her own parents were now paying the price for what she'd done. And for the first time since this mess began, she felt something new, something rare. Regret. The realization. She barely remembered hanging up. Everything was fog, but her mother's words rang on repeat in her head. We're broke. Ethan's voice echoed right behind it. What did you think was going to happen? But louder than all of that was the silence coming from me. That's what stung the most. She expected me to yell, to curse, to shout, to throw accusations like knives. But I hadn't done any of that. I had simply walked away. And in walking away, I had torn down everything they tried to stack on me. I let them make their choice. And then I made sure they understood the price of it. Now she sat there on the couch, clinging to her phone like a lifeline, finally staring down a brutal truth. I wasn't coming back. I wasn't going to save them. I wasn't going to fix it. And in that quiet moment, it hit her like a freight train. She never really knew me. She knew the version of Jake who held everything together. The man who forgave, who protected, who stayed silent. But the real me? The real Jake was the man watching it all fall apart, and not lifting a single finger to stop it. The collapse. That night, Laura lay awake in bed, staring blankly at the ceiling above. It was incredible how fast life had unraveled. All it took was one night. Yesterday, she had it all. Today, she had nothing. And worst of all, there was no one else to blame. Not Brian, not the boys, just her. She'd never known fear like this. Not when she was a broke college girl cramming for finals. Not when she was a young mom with twin boys crying at 3 a.m. Not even when she first realized she didn't love her husband the way she once had. No, this fear was different. Because this time, it wasn't just about her. She'd lost everything. And worse, she had no clue how to fix it. The house was a mess of quiet chaos. Her sons were spiraling. Her mother kept calling. Brian had gone completely silent. And the one person who could make it stop wasn't answering. The calls began. Laura tried again. The phone rang, and rang, and rang, straight to voicemail. You've reached Jake Mercer. I am unavailable. Leave a message. She clenched her jaw to fight back the tears. He was ignoring her. She texted. Nothing. She emailed. No reply. Then desperation really set in. She grabbed the house phone, the one Jake had set up for emergencies. Surely he wouldn't ignore that. But he did. And that's when she finally understood. This wasn't a tantrum. This wasn't a game. Jake was gone, and he wasn't coming back. The sons begged. Logan and Ethan had never known a world without money, without backup, without their father's safety net cushioning every fall. Until now. Now, they were flailing. Now, they were finally realizing the truth. That the man they had dismissed, mocked, and replaced had always been the one holding them up. And he wasn't holding them anymore. I don't get it, Logan muttered as he paced the floor. He can't just cut us off, right? Can he? Ethan rolled his eyes. What do you mean, can he? He just did. Logan ran a hand through his hair. But Mom, he's not going to let us go homeless or something, right? He won't just abandon us. Laura swallowed hard. She wanted to say no, wanted to comfort them, but the words wouldn't come. Because deep down, she wasn't sure anymore. Ethan grabbed his phone, frustration boiling over. Screw this. I'm calling him. Voicemail. Logan tried next. Same thing. So they left messages, voices cracking, pride dissolving. Dad, come on, we were just upset. We didn't mean it. You're still our father, okay? Please, just call us back. Dad, please. We're sorry. We need you. They left message after message. But I never picked up. And honestly, the silence cut deeper than anything I could have said. Laura's final attempt. At some point, Laura realized what she had to do. She couldn't wait for a call back. She had to see me, face to face. She had to make me hear her out. Make me forgive her. So she grabbed the keys to the car, the one I bought her, of course, and drove straight to my office. But when she got there, the receptionist didn't even blink. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Mercer," she said, voice neutral and polished. Mr. Mercer gave direct instructions not to receive any visits from you. Laura froze. Her heart dropped to her stomach. He won't see me? She thought. His own wife? She forced a smile. Try to keep control. There's been a mistake. We're married. He'll see me. The receptionist hesitated, then quietly handed her an envelope. Laura took it with shaky hands. Stepped aside. Tore it open. Inside was a single document. Divorce petition. Already filed. Already signed. Just waiting for the final stamp. There was a note attached. 5 words scrawled at the top. There's nothing left to fix. And just like that, she couldn't breathe. It was over. I wasn't waiting. I wasn't stalling. I had already let go. The mother's warning. When Laura got home that night, her mother was already there. Helen sat in the living room like a statue, hands folded, calm but cold. Laura stumbled through the door, dazed. Helen didn't need to ask what happened. She already knew. You could see it in her eyes. The disappointment. The "I told you so" look. "I told you to be careful," she said quietly, voice cutting like glass. Laura let out a bitter laugh. "Careful? About what exactly, Mother?" Helen sighed. "About underestimating a man like Jake." Laura clenched her jaw. "You told me." "I told you men adjust," Helen interrupted. "I told you your father did. But that didn't mean Jake would." She stared at her daughter, cool and steady. "I told you what it would take to keep him. You let your pride throw it all away." Laura's fist tightened. "I just wanted some freedom." Helen nodded once. "Well, now you've got it. So tell me, how's it feel?" Laura didn't answer. Because the truth? It felt like hell. Brian cracks. By midnight, Brian finally broke. Everything was gone. His business? Destroyed. His finances? In ruins. His life? Leveled. And now, he finally understood why. Because I had built him. Because I had trusted him. And because he betrayed me. But he couldn't accept it. So he did the only thing he had left. He drove to my house. He stormed up the steps like a man ready to fight, fists clenched, eyes wild, and pounded on the door. "Jake," he shouted, "come out and face me." The door opened. I stood there, calm as ever. Quiet. Still. Ice. Brian's rage didn't last long. Because the man standing in front of him, me, wasn't angry. Wasn't screaming. Wasn't looking for revenge. No. The man in front of him had already won. And Brian? He was already finished. I tilted my head slightly. "What exactly do you want, Brian?" Brian swallowed, shoulders still tense. "You ruined me." I nodded once. "Yes." His fists clenched harder. "You had no right." I stepped forward, eyes steady, voice low. "I had every right." Brian's face paled, because right then, he felt it. That cold realization. This wasn't me getting even. This was me making sure he never stood back up. The final call. That night, Laura called me one last time. One final plea. "Jake, please," she whispered into the phone. "We were wrong. I was wrong. Just talk to me. Just give me one more chance." But there was no reply. Not anymore. Because I was already gone. And I wasn't looking back. I watched the phone buzz across the table. Laura. Again. I didn't answer. Not because I didn't hear it. Not because I was busy. But because she didn't deserve an answer. So I let it ring. And ring. And finally go silent. Then it rang again. Logan. Then Ethan. Then Laura's mother. One by one. Call after call. I let every single one go to voicemail. Because for the first time in 20 years, I didn't owe them anything. Not my time. Not my patience. Not even my presence. And sure as hell not my forgiveness. The confrontation they didn't expect. I knew Laura wouldn't give up easily. She's stubborn, prideful. I knew the next move before she made it. So when she burst into my office the next morning, blowing past the front desk, I wasn't surprised. She slammed the door behind her. Her eyes were red. Her hands were trembling. She was breaking. Good. She needed to. "Jake," she started, voice raw. "Please." I didn't say a word. just leaned back in my chair and watched her crumble into silence. She swallowed hard. I know what I did. I know I hurt you. I tilted my head slightly. Which part, Laura? The lies? The betrayal? Or the planning? The part where you weren't going to stop unless I caught you. She flinched. That was the truth, wasn't it? She wasn't sorry for what she did. She was sorry I found out. She took a shaky step closer. Jake, I love you. I exhaled slowly. Then I stood, walked around the desk, stopped right in front of her, and spoke the words that ended it. No, you don't. Her breath caught. Her lips quivered. I didn't stop. You never did. Not in the way that mattered. Tears filled her eyes. That's not true. I shut her down with a quiet voice, the same one I used in court right before closing arguments. You love what I gave you. The life, the security, the image. But me? The man? The husband? You stopped loving him a long time ago. Maybe you never really did. She shook her head, desperate. It was a mistake. I gave her a small, cold smile. No, Laura, it wasn't a mistake. It was a choice. And now, she had to live with it. The sons who chose wrong. That evening, I came home to find Logan and Ethan standing in the living room. Arms crossed, faces tight. I shut the door behind me and leaned against it. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then finally, Logan broke the silence. Dad, come on, he said, his voice strained. Don't you think this is a little extreme? I didn't respond. He sighed. Okay, Fina. Mom messed up, but do you really have to punish us too? I raised an eyebrow. Punishing you? You think this is punishment? Ethan jumped in. We got nothing left, Dad. No money. No future. I let that hang in the air. Let them feel the weight of it. Then I stepped forward, stopped right in front of them, and gave them the truth they hadn't been ready to hear. Welcome to the life you thought I didn't matter in. Logan's mouth clamped shut. Ethan looked down, swallowing hard. I kept going. You thought I was just background noise. Just some guy who funded your lifestyle. You thought I was optional. Well, this is what life looks like without me. Here's the rewritten version of Part 6, the final chapter, done in the same grounded, first-person, emotionally driven voice. The language has been reshaped and expanded where needed for flow, weight, and clarity, while holding on to every meaningful moment. They'd reduced me to a bank account, and when they thought they'd found my replacement, I let out the kind of laugh that doesn't sound happy, just tired and sharp. They tossed me aside like I didn't matter, like I was just convenient. They didn't say a word now, because deep down, they knew I was right. And suddenly, they wanted all back. My money, my security, my presence. But they'd already made their decision. And so had I. Brian's last shot. I should have seen it coming. That final, desperate lunge for redemption. That night, while I was packing the last of my things, Brian showed up. He knocked like a man who had nothing left to lose. And really, he didn't. I opened the door. I didn't flinch. I didn't greet him. He stood there looking hollow. Lost. Jake, he rasped. We need to talk. I didn't move. Didn't invite him in. Just watched him. He let out a shaky breath. Ran his hand down his face. I screwed up, he muttered. I know that. Then he looked me in the eye. But you destroyed me, man. You ruined my business. My name. My whole damn life. I let him talk. Let him spill all the excuses, regrets, the last-ditch blame shifting. Then finally, I gave him a single word. Good. He blinked, thrown. What? I stepped forward, dropped my voice low. Good. I want you to know what it feels like. To lose everything. To be stabbed in the back by someone you trusted. To have the people you cared about leave you in the dark. Brian swallowed. Jake, I didn't mean. I cut him off. You meant every bit of it. And that's why I don't care. He paled. That's when it finally hit him. This wasn't a fight. This was a funeral. There was nothing left to fix. No gracias. No handshake. No next time. Just silence. And after a long moment, I shut the door. And locked it. Brian wasn't a friend anymore. To me, he no longer existed. The goodbye that wasn't really a goodbye. The next morning, I finished packing. I had everything I needed, and for once, it didn't include anyone else. I had my money, my strength, my freedom. I walked through that house one last time, fingertips brushing the walls, the furniture, the leftovers of a life that was never really mine to begin with. Then, without looking back, I stepped out the front door. And the best part? I didn't feel sad. I didn't feel regret. I felt free. Finally. Completely. Free. A new start. The hotel lobby was quiet when I walked in, suitcase in hand, lighter than I'd felt in years. The receptionist smiled politely. "Welcome, Mr. Mercer. Your suite is ready." "Thanks," I said, handing over a card, the one Laura couldn't touch. While she processed the check-in, I glanced at my phone. 67 missed calls. I let out a breath, shaking my head. They were still trying, still scrambling, still hoping to fix what was already broken beyond repair. But it was too late. For the first time in 19 years, I wasn't their pawn anymore. I was done. And they were exactly where they deserved to be. The fallout begins. By the next morning, their desperation had hit its peak. I ignored every call the night before, but the messages still poured in. "Laura, Jake, please. I'm begging you. Just talk to me. Logan, Dad, come on. Let's meet. We can figure this out. Ethan, we screwed up. We know. But we're still your family. Helen, her mother. Jake, that's enough. You've made your point." That one actually made me laugh. Made my point? No, I wasn't done making my point. I sat back in my suite, sipping fresh coffee as I watched the entire tower fall from a distance. Laura hits the wall. She must have known things were worse than they seemed, because she went to the bank again. This time, not to unlock an account. This time, to beg. She tried to get a loan, some last-ditch effort to keep the charade going, to pretend it wasn't all falling apart. But the bank saw through her. No job, no consistent income, no assets, no credibility. The same woman who had lived in luxury under my name now had no financial identity of her own. So they denied her, flat out, and she walked out with that distant, broken look, the look of someone who finally realized the truth. She had nothing. Logan and Ethan get the lesson. Logan tried to fake confidence. He called the college, demanded they give him time, argued, pleaded. He tried using my name like it was still his. But it wasn't. The financial aid office didn't care about stories. They gave him a clear answer. 7 days, or you're out. Ethan got slapped with his own reality check. He went to get his car serviced and found out the payments hadn't gone through. That's when it hit him. He didn't own that car. I did. And now, the repo truck was already on the way. I pictured his face when he realized he was never as independent as he thought. He had spent years thinking I was just a wallet. Now, he knew what life looked like without it. Brian collapses. Brian was sinking fast. Every inch of success he'd claimed was borrowed from me. My clients, my contacts, my faith. He took it all. My wife, my family, my identity. And now, he was drowning in lawsuits. All those clients he screwed over, the ones he overbilled, lied to, misled, they were suing him now. And without me to protect him, he was done. I pictured him in his office, buried in legal threats, finally realizing the truth. The man he tried to replace had burned everything down behind him. Good. Let him sit with what he did. Let's sink in. The moment they shattered. By the third day, the calls slowed. The messages softened. No more yelling. No more accusations. Just begging. And that's when I knew. I had won. I had shattered the illusion. I sat in my suite, scrolling through messages with the kind of peace I hadn't felt in years. Relief. Because I was finally me. Not someone's rock. Not someone's fallback. Not a husband. Not a father figure. Not a damn provider. Just me. And I liked who that man was. The final call. Friday night. The phone buzzed one last time. I wasn't planning to answer. But something in me, curiosity maybe, made me swipe the screen. I lifted it to my ear. Silence. Then her voice. Small. Fragile. Barely there. "Jake." I didn't speak. She exhaled, shaky and broken. I don't even know what to say. I took a sip of my DRI, then answered calmly. "Then don't say anything.